flag off the ambitious 700-kilometer superhighway, a 10-lane road project that represents President Tinubu's commitment to facilitate economic growth and improve the living standard of Nigerians.
May 29th, 2023, we have over 40 new projects ongoing throughout the 6 geopolitical zones. Today, we have selected some of the roads and bridges to represent the rest of the new projects for Mr. President to flag off. We are not just starting from one point, we are starting this section 1 in about 4 locations. At the end of the project, we are about starting concreting. So the target is to finish this section 1, not in 36 months, but in 24 months, so that Mr. President, you will commission this first section of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway within the next 2nd year in office, and we shall toll it and we begin to recover, do return on investment.
But the beauty of this is not only in Lagos, because this road goes and traverses Ogun State, goes into Ondo State, before it finally do a bus stop at Cross River State. Mr. President, you deserve a big round of applause. This is not about you. This is not about your renewed hope. This is about a generational change that you're doing.
For a man who conceived the idea of a coastal highway as a governor, achieving it as a president surely gives him bragging rights.
To me, today is my day to brag. It's my bragging day. Don't be afraid. We will do this road. 700 kilometers. It will be a success for Nigeria, and we'll do more of this.
As part of the Renewed Hope agenda, the president flagged off the 700-kilometer Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, 1,000-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry Highway, a design and procurement of 461-kilometer Africa Trans-Sahara route, and the reconstruction and rehabilitation of 330 roads across the 6 geopolitical zones.
This is a major transformation for Nigeria. We're going to see economic transformation, prosperity is unprecedented. We are going to see the development of industries like the steel industry, even the cement industry will pick up. Construction is one of the major drivers for job creation and for economic prosperity.
This is a historic project for Nigeria. It's not a project for one man or one person. That is why I want all of Nigeria to embrace this project. It's not a project for APC, it's not a project for Bola Tinubu. We should own this project, and if we own it, the possibilities are incredible.
The President is expected to return to Abuja on Tuesday for another round of commissioning. This time around, another minister in his cabinet will be showing off projects completed in less than a year. Sarah Ayeku, TVC News, Lagos.
The First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has ascribed children as sources of immense joy who need to be given more love, care and compassion by parents and guardians. He was speaking at the special Children's Day celebration tagged Celebrating with Our Children, with the theme Our Children, Our Future, in commemoration of the first anniversary of the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The First Lady encouraged the children to nurture their curiosity, continue learning, and never be afraid to ask questions. Wife of the Vice President, Nana Shatima, commended the First Lady for hosting more than 500 school children at the State House to celebrate them, stressing is a testament to her commitment to ensuring that all segments are celebrated and supported. She advised the children to imbibe the virtue of resilience, discipline, and hard work. A grant of 10 million naira each was given to participate in schools from the Renewed Hope initiative to support the developmental needs of their schools.
I am so delighted to also welcome all our lovely children to the State House. It is your day, and I'm happy to celebrate with you all. Today, like many other days, serves as a reminder of our responsibility towards your rights and well-being. As we celebrate Children's Day, a special day dedicated to you with our theme, Our Children, Our Future. holds great significance.
The First Lady understands the importance of education in shaping the future of our children. Through her Renewed Hope initiative, she has implemented various social investment programs which are significant for children.
It makes us feel happy because to know that we have been actually appreciated and people actually recognize we children actually have the time to celebrate us actually makes us very, very happy. I want to thank her very much for acknowledging we children, and we are so happy to throw this event for us.
We need to improve our school on what they already have. More teachers' salary should be increased for them so more of them could come to the school.
Meanwhile, Governor of Bayelsa State, Adiri, has commended the judiciary for upholding the truths of the Bayelsa people who voted for him. The governor was reacting to the tribunal judgments that upheld his election.
I want to appreciate the tribunal, judges, and all those who worked, including everybody who have contributed one way or the other towards this very sound judgment. You know that matters like these are distractions, particularly against the backdrop that you had an election that was adjudged to be one of the freest and the fairest, and yet you have been distracted over this period. I want to let my people know that we are still for you. We'll continue to work for you, work with you until the final day of our administration.
You will see from the judgment itself, the case of our opponents was built on a very weak foundation. And if you listen to the judgment, you see that their case, the evidence was deficient both in quality and in quantity.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it's over time to speak with Dr. Muda Yusuf, the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Tonight, our focus is President Bola Tinubu's impact on the economy. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. In a few days, President Bola Tinubu will be celebrating his first anniversary as the 16th president of Nigeria. For some Nigerians, it is a milestone that evokes serious reflections, given the electoral promises of every occupant of that office and the country's existential challenges that needs to be tackled. With an 80-page policy document that highlights an 8-point agenda, top of on his priority list of action plans was national security, economy, agriculture, power, oil and gas, transportation, and education. Tonight, let's focus on the impact on economy in the last 1 year. Joining me for this discussion is a friend of the House, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Dr. Yusuf, good evening to you, sir. Thank you for
good evening, Jumoke. Yeah,
and welcome to Politics Tonight.
Thank you.
So 1 year ago, the president assured Nigerians that his administration will ensure they get value for every kobo spent and that his government will leave a lasting legacy for prosperity to future generations, while removing the yoke of poor governance and expanding access to qualitative public goods. Is the president on the right track to fulfilling these promises?
Yes, I believe the president is on the right track. But in doing an assessment of the 1 year, you have to put it in context, because there's a strong contextual factor in the assessment. I say this because we need to look at the circumstances under which he came in terms of the state of the economy, the state of our finances. I'm talking about the fiscal operations of government, the foreign exchange environment, the situation with our oil and gas sector, particularly in terms of oil output and insecurity in those areas. If you look at that context, you will appreciate the fact that there was a need to correct a lot of fundamental things. So I will say for the first half of this 1 year, the administration was busy trying to fix those fundamentals. Because you cannot build something on nothing.
Absolutely.
If you have a very weak foundation, if you continue to build on it, it will eventually collapse and everything will be lost. Now, if you take the fiscal space, for instance, as at the time the administration came in, the central bank was practically financing government operations because the fiscal space was extremely very tight. Many of the state governments were struggling to pay salaries and to pay pensions and all of that. The ways and means financing, which we call financing of government operations by the CBN, rose to an all-time high of close to 30 trillion naira. And that kind of financing had its own implications for the macroeconomic environment, both for inflation, for deficit, for exchange rate, and so on and so forth. So that was a major issue, the state of finance.
That needs to be checked.
That needs to be dealt with fundamentally. Then we had the challenge with our foreign exchange environment. The foreign exchange environment is very critical to the economy because it is critical to trade. Whether you are talking about trade around equipment, around raw materials, around finished goods, is extremely very critical. It was also in a very bad shape because we saw a situation where the reserves were massively depleted. Although these issues did not immediately manifest until there was an audit of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We now saw how weak the system was. We saw a lot of forward commitments on our foreign reserves. We saw a lot of exchange, forward, through the banks and all of that. So there were a whole lot of issues around the foreign exchange. There were also issues around even the opacity or transparency of the foreign exchange market. There's a lot of transparency issues. We were having issues with our international trade commitments. I'm talking of letters of credit, which many correspondent banks were no longer honoring. We had a huge backlog of mature obligations with the CBN for the first 6 months or more was trying to clear. I'm saying all of this for us to understand the context in which the administration took off. So all of these things were a lot of drag on the administration.
So before we get to how the president has tried to, address these fundamental issues,
yes.
From what angle would you say former President Olusegun Obasanjo is coming from when he said, policies like fuel subsidy removal, exchange rate policies were necessary but wrongly implemented? What do you think he's talking about?
I think he was also talking in the same vein. Okay. Because when you had an economy where almost 80% of your revenue was being spent on subsidy, where it is the CBN that was now almost providing funding for the FAC allocation. Of course, that was not sustainable. So I think that was the context in which he was talking about. And again, if you look at the foreign exchange that I referred to, there were all manner of malpractices around the foreign exchange market. This is not about blaming anybody. This is about identifying the realities of the challenges that existed. So when President Obasanjo was saying that they were right policies, of course I agree with him. But when he now said it was wrongly implemented, well, I don't know what he meant by that. Because when you talk about fixing this issue of subsidy, the economy was already at the brink. And when you are in that kind of situation, the choices are very limited. You don't have the time, you don't have too many choices, and there's no perfect time.
All right, Dr.
For that kind of measures to be taken.
So let's try and compartmentalize these issues.
Yes.
Really, how fundamental are the steps taken by the president to rescue the Nigerian economy from the brink? First, addressing the level of criminality in the oil-producing areas.
Well, that is very key. It's key because even though we talk about diversification of the economy and all of that, the oil and gas sector is still the life wire of this economy. especially from the point of view of our foreign exchange earnings. If you look at our export statistics, oil and gas still accounts for about 95% of our foreign exchange earnings. And given the level of our import dependence, if anything seriously happens to the oil and gas, the whole economy may come crashing. So that is why one will appreciate all the efforts that the government has put in place, trying to tackle the problem of oil theft. Because the situation has so degenerated to an incredible level.
So how would
where people are using vessels to steal crude. Now we see all manner of refinery. It was a completely an ungoverned space. I mean, one wondered how we got to that point. And you can see the cost of trying to even correct that in terms of commitment of the military, loss of lives, resources, and, you know, it's a lot of work. That for me is very critical, and I think the figures are beginning to reflect. In terms of the oil output and all of it, we are not there yet, but the criminality has been so deeply entrenched that it has been extremely difficult to quickly reverse it. But at least from 1 million barrels per day, even less than 1 million barrels per day a few years ago, we are now talking about 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. The last report I had from the NNPC Limited GMD, it was talking about 1.7 million barrels per day. That's an indication of the progress. And these things are very critical to the fundamentals of the economy, because that is the main source of foreign exchange earnings. Of course, through the reforms by the central bank trying to liberalize the market, make it more transparent, licensing more IMTOs and so on, the inflows from autonomous sources are also improving. But the oil and gas sector still remains the major pillar as far as foreign exchange is.
All right, so I asked that question because, I mean, we knew that when the president took off, one of the biggest challenges met by this administration was a dire lack of investment in the oil and gas sector. Yeah. So I'm asking, in the last 1 year, going by the reforms and policies of this present administration, what has changed?
Well, what has changed is that, first, the security situation is gradually improving, given all the efforts that has been made by the government. Secondly, is that we are beginning to see a renewed interest in terms of investment. Because I recall that not too long ago, I think it was the finance minister that announced some new set of fiscal incentives for investors in the oil and gas sector. We are talking of major IOCs, major investors. You know, and these are incentives that we believe will further incentivize, you know, this investors. So I think that is a major step. And again, from some of the trips that the president has undertaken, there have been some, you know, commitments in terms of willingness to invest. But more importantly, is the incentives that have been put on the table. Because I remember some of these investors met with the president, and the president assured them that...
So would you also say these reforms have increased competitiveness in the global oil and gas sector? Of
course, yes. But we are not there yet. Because this issue of criminality is a big issue. And it's something that will take time, you know, to be able to, you know, deal with family. And, you know, when you have a confidence crisis in any sector, it takes time for those confidence to return. So it is a gradual process. And the more we deal with some of these issues, particularly insecurity, and also issue of policy and incentives, which is the collective approach or the multi-pronged approach that the administration is using. So with that, our competitiveness level will increase. Right. But again, there's a challenge because we're in an era where we are talking now about decarbonization. You know, so to even attract investors into this fossil fuel sector, has become even more challenging. So that is why it is important, and I think that is why the president is also taking steps to roll out a lot more incentives for this oil and gas sector investors.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, so how do you also evaluate this administration's efforts to correct the distortions in the foreign exchange markets?
Well, I think we have made very significant progress as far as that is concerned. Again, it's a major work. It's a heavy lifting that needs to be done there, because we are all witnesses to the shocks that those reform has brought upon us, in terms of the cost of goods and services, in terms of the foreign exchange losses that were suffered by companies, in terms of the cost of importation of raw materials, and all of these things translated to high inflation. There is no doubt about that. But just as the president said severally, that if there were other ways to deal with these issues that will inflict less pain on the citizens, he would have opted for it. But again, the choices are very limited. So what we have seen under the current administration of the central bank, first, we have seen much better transparency in the management of the foreign exchange market. It wasn't as opaque as it used to be. We have seen less corruption, because at the time when we had a huge premium between the official exchange rate and the parallel market exchange rate, there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of round tripping. All of that has practically disappeared, because the gap has significantly narrowed. And players in the market have a lot more confidence now in the market, because it is essentially market-driven. But there's a flip side, and the flip side is that we are still dealing with a lot of volatilities in the market, which is also not particularly good for investments. But I believe it is work in progress. It's a corrective kind of reform, but we need to move quickly to stabilize the market. I'm not talking about the exchange rate per se now. I'm talking about stability in the market, so that investors can plan, so that the level of uncertainty in the economy will reduce, so that the level of investment risk will also reduce, because uncertainty creates a lot of risk in terms of investment. So that needs to be done. And in any case, this is not an issue that the central bank alone can deal with. You need fiscal support. Just as I said, if you're able to make progress, a lot more progress with oil production, it will help the central bank in stabilizing the market. If you're able to make a lot more progress in import substitution, that's reducing our dependence on imports. It will help the central bank to stabilize the market. Just as we are beginning to see now with respect to our energy products. I'm talking of petroleum products. Right now, we are no longer importing diesel. I'm sure we are no longer importing aviation fuel. And Alhaji Dangote has assured us that by June, hopefully, we stop the importation of petrol. So if you're able to take that pressure off the foreign exchange market, it's going to have a remarkable impact on the market. Because when we are dealing with foreign exchange rate, is a price determined by the supply and demand. So the supply will come more from the oil and gas and from exports. Moderating demand will come from import substitution, so that we are not importing too many things. The import bill of petroleum products is almost 1/3 of our import bill, 1/3 of our foreign exchange. So if we give all the necessary support to all these initiatives about domestic refining of petroleum products, we are talking about removing 1/3 of the pressure from the market. And you can imagine the impact that will have.
All right. Dr. Yusuf, let's go back to the shocks as a result of the removal of fuel subsidies. But when you now hear President Bola Tinubu say the removal of fuel subsidies has led to significant savings and increased government revenue, And he has also stressed the benefits this savings has brought to the nation's finances. He's talking about funding various social and economic support groups. But when you hear Nigerians say they cannot see the effect of the savings.
No. You see, for the average Nigerian, the parameters are different. The parameters are things that impact on the welfare, day-to-day living of their lives. That for them is the main parameter to measure success.
That's it.
You know, but for somebody who is at the leadership level, you'll be looking at the bigger picture. Eventually, the benefits may cascade or will cascade down. But you need to stabilize the system before you begin to address some of these welfare issues. You know? For instance, for some of them, there were states that were not able to pay salaries. There were states that were not able to pay pensioners. They were not able to pay gratuity. But with this reform, the forex reform and the fuel subsidy reform, many of these states are now taking almost 3 times what they used to take. It has impacted on the lives of people. At least those on the payroll who are owed salaries, who are not being paid salaries. Some contractors that were owed were paid. But I understand where the majority of Nigerians are coming from. They are talking about the price of rice, the price of bread, the price of noodles, the price of cooking gas. These are the basic things that the average Nigerians are worried about. And therefore, it is going to this second year, the administration needs to prioritize those things. We need to come up with a Marshall Plan to deal with the issue of cost of living. Because as far as the average Nigerian is concerned, that is what matters the most. Because their incomes are not increasing and prices are going up. Yes, some of these variables may not be immediately, may not be something we can deal with, but I believe that if the administration sits with the critical stakeholders, for instance, in agriculture, in food processing, if the president sits them down and says, well, we need to bring down the cost of food. What do I need to do for you? I'm sure people will take up the challenge. They are talking of bread. The president can sit down with the flour millers. But that is the starting point. And luckily, there are not so many. We have a rather monopolistic structure in that space. So engagement should be easy. If they want some other incentives, the government can give it to them. I want the price of bread to come down.
All right. So
I want the price of noodles to come down.
Absolutely. So still talking about high cost of living, high cost of food prices in the market, because we saw how this administration tried to address that. Talk about declaration of the state of emergency on food security, release of fertilizers and grains, plans for the creation of National Commodity Board. Would you say these directives, in one way or another, cost some respite?
No, it's not significant. I must be frank too. It's not significant because we are dealing with a population of 200 million people. This is not a problem that palliatives can deal with. How many people will you give palliatives to?
Conditional or unconditional cash transfers?
Well, I mean, in terms of materiality, it cannot go far. It is part of the solution. I'm not diminishing it. But we need something that is much more systemic.
What should that be?
That is why I was talking about engaging critical stakeholders in the production of these items. What do I need to do? What kind of government support do you need to be able to produce more and supply the market? If the market receives double the supply, the prices will crash. You know? So short-term, immediate something, yes, the palliatives maybe can go somewhere. But we need something that is much more systemic. And that is engaging critical stakeholders and deploying a lot more incentives from the fiscal side. It could be tariffs. It could be taxes. It could be whatever concessions there, because these are investors that will listen to government, that can share the pains of the government. But I want this to happen. Those are the government is at least engaging with Alhaji Dangote and all of that around the issue of fuel. If you want something to happen around fuel, it can happen. Because we are dealing now not just with pure economics, we are dealing with political economy, where there has to be government intervention to deal with some social issues. That, for me, I think, is a strategy.
So because we're talking about agriculture and food security, how do state governors come in here? I mean, earlier you've talked about how more allocation is being given to state governors at this point. I mean, how then do state governors come in at this point, if we're talking about producing more?
The state governments are very critical to agriculture. In fact, they have bigger role to play in agriculture than the federal government. First, they are the owners of the land. The land belongs to the state. The states have custody of the land. And you need land for agriculture. That is one. Secondly, the states are closer to the farmers and to all the operators in the agricultural sector. So they have a whole lot of role to play as far as agriculture is concerned. And that is why it is important for them. Yes, they have more allocations. Some of them are building bridges, building all sorts of things. But they should address this primary concern of how to support productivity at the very basic level, especially of agriculture. And different geographical locations have different endowments in terms of agriculture. What you can do in the Niger Delta is different from what you can do in the North Central, is different from what you can grow in the Northeast or the Northwest. So those opportunities are there. And the state needs to empower the farmers and those who are in agriculture.
There are those who have talked about how government must invest in high technology storage facilities.
Well, that is part of it. Because if you are talking about agriculture, you don't talk about agriculture just at the primary level of agriculture. You talk about the entire value chain of agriculture. That is the production, the inputs to start with. What kind of inputs are you making available? What kind of support are you giving in terms of equipment and machineries? And if they produce, how about the storage? How about the transportation?
I mean, that's part
how about the marketing? How about packaging? How about exports? So it's a whole value chain. And both the states and the federal government have responsibilities along that value chain. And above all, we need to deal with the problem of insecurity.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, let's take a break.
Major issue.
Yeah. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. We're watching Politics Tonight. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Our planet, our home, threatened by man's activities with fears of mass extinction on the rise. On Green Angle, we examine the issues that affect our environment, seek solutions to put us on track to secure and restore a cleaner and greener world for generations to come.
TVC News Weekend Lineup. TVC Breakfast Saturday with Kemi Fola Adeyemo and Emmanuel Ajayi. Political Standpoint with Precious Amayo. Newsweek with Mark Otabo. Politics on Sunday with Femi Akonde. Community Forum with Sarah Yeku. Get ready for the biggest stories, fresh perspectives, and burning news discussions that round up the weekend. Only on TVC News.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us on the program. And I've been speaking with Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Tonight, we're focused on President Bola Tinubu's impact on the economy in the last 1 year. Dr. Yusuf, thanks so much for staying with us on Politics Tonight. Let's move on to CBN's monetary policy. The CBN has increased the benchmark interest rate again. What's the impact of this? How significant is this?
Well, the CBN's mandate is price stability. And the CBN can only use the tools that it has. But unfortunately, we are dealing with an inflation situation that has so many drivers. And many of the factors driving inflation are not within the control of the Central Bank of Nigeria. So the CBN keeps deploying its own tools in a rather aggressive manner, to see how to tame inflation. I'm not too confident that much has been achieved with those tools. I'm talking about this monetary policy tightening. If anything, I think it's hurting the economy even more.
How?
Now, it is investors that borrow money from the banks. And given the level of interest rates now, I don't see how any investor can borrow money at the current rate and make any tangible return out of it.
You think this is counterproductive?
Because we are talking about interest rate of about 30%. In some instances, 35%. As an investor, what do you want to invest in to give you a return of 30% in this economy? Which sector? Not even trading. Not to talk of manufacturing. Not to talk of agriculture. Not to talk of mining. Not to talk of real estate. You can't use that kind of fund to do anything and make something concrete of it. But it's a trade-off, because that's the nature of economic policy. For every policy, there is a cost. So this is the cost of this policy. But my worry is that I'm not sure the policy is actually achieving much in terms of bringing down prices.
So if it's not achieving much, why then do you think CBN continues to adjust?
No, that is the only tools it has. That is the only tools. And that is why we have been, at least a lot of us have been talking about addressing those structural issues that affect prices. If, for instance, we get proper support, maybe fiscal support, for those who are in the petroleum refining sector, to bring down the cost of PMS, cost of diesel, cost of aviation fuel, it will impact prices. If you have some measures to deal with issues of maybe transportation, and we have maybe more access to vehicles, and interest rates now import duty now to import a vehicle and all of that, it's so high. You can see how rickety all those commuter buses are.
CBN has just recently hiked the exchange rate for cargo clearance.
The exchange rate for cargo clearance is another big issue.
Is that necessary?
It's absolutely unnecessary. Because it's like you are bombarding businesses from two angles, two ends. They are dealing with issues of depreciated exchange rates. Of course, we cannot do much about that. That's the fundamental.
Yes.
But when it comes to issue of the cost of clearance of cargo, we can moderate that. It doesn't take anything away from the reform. We are not talking about selling foreign exchange to anybody at 1,000 or 800. No. We are saying that we want the CBN, in conjunction with the fiscal, to lower the cost of clearance of cargo. Now, the custom duty rate now has gone to, I think, 1,450, 1,700 or something. I mean, by the time they finish clearing the cargo, you can imagine the impact of that on prices.
All right.
So if the CBN is talking about moderating prices, I think the CBN should please also look at that side. Because that segment is essentially a trade issue. It's a trade policy issue. But unfortunately, in the Customs Act, what is stated there is that the exchange rate that will be used for the computation of import duty is as determined by the central bank. That is where the problem is coming from. Otherwise, all these variables should have been put squarely within the domain of the fiscal policy authority because it is about trade. But even if you have the law and the law is hurting the people, we can sit back and discuss it.
All right. Dr. Yusuf, we're winding down. So let's talk about the president's latest initiative, that's consumer credit scheme. Now, given the state of the economy, how timely do you consider this initiative in revamping or in its effort to revamp the nation's economy?
No, it is timely because citizens need credit and they need affordable credit. And that is the difference between this credit and the other credit that exists in other financial platforms. It's affordable, and I imagine that it will also be of much longer tenure. So it will help to empower the citizens, increase purchasing power, and once more citizens have purchasing power, it helps to also power the economy. Because those who are producing need people to buy their products, So that is the beauty of it. But we also need to go a step further. We need to make a lot more use of our cooperative system. We are in Lagos alone, we have close to 3,000 cooperatives. So if we channel some of these funds to the cooperatives, because they already have structures, they already have the KYC, they know themselves. They know who will pay, who will not pay. So apart from giving credit, asking me to go online, let us also make use of the cooperative structure. And cooperatives exist across all sectors. They exist in the market, they exist among artisans, they exist among people who are workers in offices, and they exist across the country.
So you're saying government should also try and fund cooperative societies?
Yes. And the recovery rate in cooperative is always very high. The risk is lower, and the penetration is more impactful. It's more inclusive. If you go to the markets, it could be tomato sellers, it could be onions, all of them, they have cooperatives. And they use that to be able to mobilize funds among themselves. But what is their capacity to mobilize the funds? So if the government, both the states and the federal government, put some funds within the cooperative system, it will go a long way.
All right. But back to this scheme, the consumer credit scheme, 100 billion naira has been budgeted for the scheme. How do you think this will in any way revive the manufacturing sector?
No, did you say 100 million or
100 billion?
100 billion. Well, the impact it will have is on purchasing power. If more people have access to affordable credit, I keep saying it, not just any credit. Affordable, single digits, which is what this credit scheme is all about. It will generate the demand for these manufactured products, which is a good thing. Because the more people are empowered to buy, the better for the manufacturers. So that is the immediate nexus or transmission mechanism in terms of benefits of this scheme to those who are manufacturing. It's about, improving the aggregate demand, the purchasing power.
But what do you think are the roles of Nigerians, or is the role of an average Nigerian if we are to achieve an efficient consumer credit system?
Well, it's a question of, being honest enough. Because one of the challenges that even some banks have with this consumer credit is the high rate of default.
Ability to pay back.
People take the money, some deliberately just run away, you can't find them. So that is why it is important that the framework has to have a very sound, robust risk management framework, so that we don't have the kind of stories we are having with the Anchor Borrowers Program. We are almost 70% or 80% of the monies were not paid back. So the framework, I think, is what is most important. We cannot rely too much on the morality of people to behave well. What is important in financial matters is to have your framework to protect the fund. And I imagine that those who are packaging it have that framework. And that is why I think they are starting with the ministries and all of that, people who are salary earners. If anything goes wrong, can grab their salaries. And that's why I was also suggesting that they can also go through the channel of cooperatives. That will also help. Because the cooperatives structure is such that the KYC is also very robust, themselves. And this thing will trickle down properly. But those who are people who understand credit and credit management should be able to come up with a framework to ensure the safety of the funds, because the funds is meant to be revolving. So to minimize the rate of default and the rate of losses. I think that is important.
All right. So with how battered many stakeholders, economists have said the economy was when the president assumed office, how strategic do you think the president needs to be if he is to, make any magic in the next 4 years, or in the next 3 years, rather?
Well, he has already started on a right footing. But what I will say is that, there's no policy that is perfect. So as we progress with even the reforms, we need to stop occasionally to do a proper appraisal of it, to understand it and look at what needs to be done better. I think that is very important, because there is nothing that is perfect.
Is there anything
we are
wrong
dealing
with
with
reversing any policy?
There is nothing wrong. The president has done it several times. And the president has even admitted that he's not a superhuman. It's not perfect. If there's any mistakes, he listens. From what you can see, the president listens.
Absolutely.
If there's any serious critique of a policy and there's superior argument, the president has a way of reversing himself. And that's a hallmark of humility and good leadership. So there's nothing wrong at all. But what I'm saying is that nothing should be cast in stone. As we progress, we should review it, in the light of our own realities. And we should also not adopt any template 100%. I'm talking of World Bank templates, IMF templates. We should not take it entirely and swallow it like that. We should situate it within our own context. Political context, social context, and even cultural context. I think that is very important.
All right.
And we should engage stakeholders to get feedback from what we are doing. Each of the ministers should be engaging their stakeholders regularly.
So finally, before I let you go, what other areas do you think the president needs to focus on in reviving the economy of this country?
Well, there is really nothing much to add to what he's doing. He's already addressing the fundamental issues. But what I think we also need to do a lot more, but this may be medium to long term, is to see how we can reduce the dependence of our manufacturing sector on imports. Because we have a manufacturing that is heavily dependent on imports, and that will require some heavy lifting in terms of investment in what we call the heavy industries. The paper industry, pulp and paper industry, the iron and steel, the petrochemicals, the aluminum smelter industries. These industries are heavy. They are the ones that are supposed to be providing raw materials, to all these other lighter industries, so that we become an economy that is a lot more resilient. Our vulnerability to external shocks will reduce to the extent that we can reduce our import dependence. Although that may be medium to long term, but we should have an eye on that and also have the supporting infrastructure, particularly power. We cannot leave power entirely to the private sector.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. It's always a pleasure having you on Politics Tonight. Really appreciate your time with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG. And on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Good night, everyone.
Get in on the action with Betano, your exciting destination for sports betting. Enjoy an award-winning experience with amazing betting options, cash outs and missions, as well as other features. Join now and get a welcome bonus of up to 200,000 Naira. Betano.ng, the game starts now.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move weigh in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty, erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Every weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world,
breaking down intricate economic and financial matters.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and the thrilling world of cryptocurrencies.
We unveil and analyze complex policies of the CBN and other government parastatals as they affect your everyday life, keeping you a step ahead every time.
Okay, this is the edible. Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate fact from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life, helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News. First with breaking news.
Sometimes it's the story that calls. At other times, the people just want to be heard.
School, I need students, but I need teachers.
Can't continue like this.
Their voices re-echoing through time itself.
We haven't done anything. If the tide is high, everybody run for safety.
Their tears leave a sweet sour taste for all their demands. A familiar call beckoning for change. In our world, no one expects a disaster to happen. But when it does, we'll be there to x-ray all sides, from the east to the west, north and south. Committee Forum will examine the oddities and challenges to economic development, as well as issues yearning for government intervention. Watch fresh episodes of Community Forum on Sundays by 9:30 p.m. only on TVC News.
Good morning, Marina Station and all the passengers.
Efficient, it's comfortable.
This development will go a long way in reducing congestion and emission.
The trains are a long-term solution to Lagos traffic challenges.
This is where we take the final, decisions on policies, programs of government. I will have to ensure that, the narration of Lagos as a PLC is taken very, very seriously.
This is a major pedestrian bridge linking Oyinbo here to Apapa Road over there.
With this overpass, we are providing what we call permanent solutions.
This place is one of the most dangerous areas at the biosecurity.
At TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking it. TVC News, wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News.
Welcome to the Art Express. Now, as you know, it is our primary assignment on the Art Express to project artists who, through their works, paint the world in many bright colors. All you have to do is sit back and relax as I take you on this exciting creative journey. My name is Tolokwe Lamini Girls. Gallery Beyond the Eye exhibition by Iwalewa Gallery of Contemporary and Modern Art brings to the fore a rare opportunity to postulate fresh ideas, artistic concepts, and insights from the stable of some of Nigeria's best creatives. Let's take a look.